Hello, writers. Come write with me. My name is Mykela Greenwood. I create worlds for mind adventures. Welcome to my YouTube channel, Write with Mykela. Don't forget to like and subscribe and hit the bell so you can go on this journey with me. Today is Tuesday, and a viewer asked me to go a little deeper into fiction versus nonfiction. And I tell you, as a child, those two terms were very confusing for me. But I have a little better understanding as an adult. We will start today with nonfiction. Nonfiction is prose writing that is based on facts, real events, and real people, such as a biography or history. Also in this section or genre would be how-to books, like How to Program PHP. Now, let's take some of that apart. Prose is simply written or spoken language in its ordinary form without metrical structure. Metrical structure would be a rhyming or a rhythm or so many syllables in a phrase or stanza of poetry. In other words, it can be dry or dull, but it doesn't have to be. Still, a book about coding and PHP wouldn't take us to another world and help us relax. But perhaps the life of George Washington could definitely hold our interest and do so. Dull and dry is not part of the definition of nonfiction. Now, the main part of the definition is based on facts. So let's look at fact versus opinion. A fact is a thing that is known or proved to be true. Just a caution here. Science is considered to be a fact. But scientists are always researching and redefining things. A perfect example is Pluto. When I was a child growing up, Pluto was a planet. That was a fact. We took tests and I put Pluto as a planet, the 9th planet, on my test to get it right. Now, telescopes are better and the scientists can refine the definition of a planet. And Pluto's mass just didn't cut it. At least I think that's part of why scientists demoted Pluto. Then scientists called it something else for a short time. I don't even know what it was called. And then they decided it was a dwarf planet. My point to you is time period. Facts are known in a specific period of time. If you go back far enough, then the earth is flat. We know that's not true today, but before Columbus, it certainly was considered a fact. Now, let's discuss real events and real people. For a nonfiction, you are looking for just the facts, and you would only add feeling or emotions if you interviewed the person or people or had their journal. If we wrote a biography about George Washington and we had his journal along with facts and dates of events, we could write a nonfiction. But if we decided we would take the dates and write with our beliefs of George Washington's thoughts, then we would have a historical fiction and not a biography or nonfiction of George Washington. So let's look a bit at opinion. Opinion is a view or judgment formed about something, not necessarily based on fact or knowledge. In the above example, I said we could write a historical fiction if we wrote using the actual events, but used our beliefs, our views, our judgments about how George Washington felt or thought or saw things. Basically, if we tried to ascertain his perspective without his journal or his wife's journal or his mother's journal, then we are using our beliefs. When we insert our belief, we are inserting our opinion, and that makes it fiction. Now, we have informed opinions, or we may have historians and have expert opinions, but those are still opinions. Nonfiction writing is very necessary in many aspects of life. I've read several books of nonfiction, as I'm a lifelong learner. And some of them read like a textbook, where I have to read sentences 3 times, read it again, to get things to go into my brain. But others I've read, and the writer's style puts me at ease and describes things in layman's terms. Is it still nonfiction? Of course. Of course it's nonfiction. I admire those writers who can write a nonfiction where I can just read it and understand it and learn without struggling. Is it fun to write nonfiction? Well, if you found a subject that you really loved, like woodworking, some people love woodworking, and you wanted to share that subject, then I'm sure it would be fun for you to write that nonfiction. Fiction in literature in the form of prose describes imaginary events and people. Fiction is something that the writer invents, or something that is untrue. Basically, fiction is your creation. I create worlds for mind adventures. At the same time, I want it to seem real enough that my readers enjoy my worlds. Okay, let's dive a little deeper with fiction. Are we free to write anything? Well, yes and no. If you have a historical fiction with dates, you have to have your dates stated correctly. If you're writing pure fiction, then you're creating a timeline. Remember, we discussed that plot is the sequence of events that shape a broader narrative or a broader story. So you can't just pop back and forth, back and forth, back and forth in your timeline without some foreshadowing or flashback. And we'll talk about that in another episode. So you would have structure. So yes, it's fiction, but there's structure. While you are writing opinions and creating every scene, your readers need to be able to follow. Thus, some rules or basic facts of life will still exist in your story. For example, an apple falls from a tree. It doesn't fly up into the sky unless you're in a different dimension or different realm or on the moon or something. Let's discuss science fiction for a minute. When you write a sci-fi, you create facts. Think of Stargate. In that series, they had gates. And by dialing the gate, it would create wormholes to travel between the 2 gates. That was a fact in that series. So once they established that fact, they needed to be consistent with how they used it. For example, they always had 7 numbers or symbols to dial. And one of the characters on the show, Daniel Jackson, explained why it was 7 numbers or symbols. So they couldn't just suddenly have 5 numbers. And they had to explain anomalies, like why did the wormhole jump to a different place? But even though this was a fact for the series, it doesn't make it a fact in real life. I'm sure I quite muddied the waters there a bit, but I didn't want you to think dull and boring was nonfiction. Some fiction just isn't entertaining either, but it's still fiction. I didn't want you to think you could weave in your opinions with the facts to have a nonfiction. And I didn't want you to think that you could create facts or rules in your story and then just willy-nilly break those rules or facts. So let's restate some things. Nonfiction is prose writing that is based on facts, real events, and real people, such as biography or history, with no opinions woven in. Last Tuesday we had the cat and dog scenarios. So the nonfiction would have been a dog and a cat cross the street. And nothing more. No big dog, no small cat, no busy street. Unless, of course, Google documented that the street was busy. No adjectives or adverbs, no extra descriptions, just the facts. Assuming a cat and dog did, in fact, cross the street. Fiction describes imaginary events and people. Fiction is something that the writer invents or something that is untrue. Once we came up with a story for the pretend news channel to run, we were creating. We were inventing. We were having fun with our imaginations. We were using our opinions to become dog lovers or cat lovers or whatever nouns you chose to use. In my opinion, it is much more fun to write a scene in a story that I've created than it is to write nonfiction. Although I've written a research paper on wolves, and I enjoyed that. I enjoyed all I learned while writing it. I still had to know my facts, and I had to document them. When I'm writing a scene in my story, the only facts that I need to keep straight are those that I've created, including the timeline. Those of you joining me on Friday know that my timeline had some inconsistencies concerning where the wolf was. Of course, now that I know about that inconsistency, I know how I will fix it. Kirsha will still go look for tracks to compare, but Kieran will ask her what she is doing, and she will tell him. Then they will have a conversation, and that scene will show my readers how concerning having the cart tipped over is for Kirsha. Of course, I have not connected that scene very well in my story, so I will have to tie it in a little more, which I will do on the next edit run, or I will edit it out. To clear things up some, I will say that I designed the shared plot 1 for Fiction Works. I am writing a fiction from it. I am reading City of the Ancients on Friday, which is a work of fiction. All writings I've read on the channel are fiction and completely made up by me. Now, that one cave I shared with you, I enjoyed. And I've thought a little of what else I could create to go with it, but that is fun for another day. Leave a comment below on if you read nonfiction and enjoy it. Leave a comment below on what type of fiction you enjoy reading, or if you have created rules or facts that your story has to abide by. Join me Friday for story time. I will read City of the Ancients, Chapter 17, another leg of the journey. Join me Tuesday for some more jargon or writing prompt. If you have a suggestion on what I should do, then leave that in the comments below. Like I had that one viewer that wanted the nonfiction and fiction that we did today. So she said that, her kid isn't getting this in the school. They're not teaching it anymore. And so she wanted me to do it. So if you think that that's something that you come up with a subject that you think I should do, then let me know. And I'll put my hand to it. I may not do it the way you would do it, but I will certainly attempt it if I feel like it's something that I can do. Writers send their chapters for the chapter exchange to writewithmykela@gmail.com. In between days, you can visit my website at www.bymykela.com, where you will find fictional character biographies. Both of those the website and the email address will be posted at the end of the video. Thank you for joining me today. I really appreciate your participation. If you know someone who would like this video, then please share it with them. This is Mykela with Write with Mykela. Bye for now.